Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. This show is produced by the POCUA and is founded upon its Soundness initiative. This episode is also sponsored by the POCUA, a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement, as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. Always remember, if you aren't banking with a POCUA credit union, you're just working with an institution that just so happens to serve public safety professionals, and you deserve better. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Public Safety Talk Radio, and I have a very interesting guest, an individual and a background that I've never had before. This is our first RN on Public Safety Talk Radio. We're trying to be equal opportunity. We've had law enforcement people, we've had a firefighter, and now we have our first nurse. But this is a real interesting nurse because she does improv too. Let me tell you about her. Her name is Nancy Ann Horvath. And she was born in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, to a theatrical Hungarian Slovak family. Wow, okay, so we got to hear about that. She decided at age 5 to be a nurse and actually became one. How about that? How often do we actually become what we want to be at 5? I wanted to be Spider-Man. I'm still working on it. When she saw those great white crisp uniforms. After graduating from Sacred Heart Hospital School of Practical Nursing, she moved to Morristown, New Jersey, where she did both nursing and local theater. She also started taking classes in New York City for acting, commercials, and improvisation. She moved to New York City, worked for an oncologist, studied at the HB Studios, and also worked at Radio City Music Hall. And then she moved to LA, California, where we are right now. Proved to be a good decision because having joined the American Federation of Radio and Television Arts, AFTRA, say that fast a few times, her Screen Actors Guild SAG card came a year later. Nancy Ann has always seen the need to live in the present moment. Nursing has shown her we are all here to make a difference, and each day is truly a gift. And I know that she's making a difference. And I know a little bit about improv coming from the second city of Chicago. I can keep on reading. Nancy Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I forgot about the crisp white uniforms, so I'll put my hat on. I became a nurse when nurses wore hats. Now they just wear them here.
Yeah. Now, is that an N95 mask?
Oh, I have one of those, but this is not an N95.
That's not the one.
Yeah, with Chicago, you're into comedy and improv. So I will start. I do a little stand-up.
Go for it.
This actually started before the COVID. I would go on stage and I'd have gloves. And they'd look at me and I said, no, I'm not one of those super clean people, but you could have your first group physical with me. And it counts because I'm a nurse. And now people are doing physicals online. So this is how a group physical works. Pay attention. When I say 2, you got to clap 2 times. Okay, Ken?
Okay.
1, 2. That's it. You clapped. You clapped and you passed. So I take my gloves off, I throw them into the audience, and I say, that's it. You're healthy.
Awesome. I'm going to tell my wife, who's also in healthcare, that I don't need to go for my physical this year now. That is perfect.
Because you had one right here. Your health starts up here, and I say it goes all the way down to your baby toe. So this controls everything. And as you know, I've watched some of your podcasts and some of the guests you've had on, and we can't keep this all locked up because living in the moment is what it's all about. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I love the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, because you were so nice, now we might have to have you on a couple episodes. But
you never know what's coming out of this mouth.
But yeah, you know what? Everything is fair game here on Public Safety Talk Radio. But, can you also, if I clap 2 more times, can I check off my colonoscopy too and not have to go to that later on?
Well, for that, I'll need a clean glove. So we're not going there.
All right. Well, maybe we'll talk. Well, maybe we'll have a bonus episode on that one.
Yeah.
A bonus episode that neither I nor anybody else wants to take part of.
I'm from the East Coast, so I'm very thrifty. So when I throw these out into the audience, they think they're going to keep them, but I say, no, I use them again and again. The parents that grew up before, the 20s and the 30s, everything had 4 or 5 uses. That's my parents. definitely.
Exactly. I'm not even gonna go there because that'll take us down a rabbit hole that I really don't want to try to get out of. But as I mentioned and I joked about a little bit, not everybody becomes what they think they're gonna be at 5 years old. But you did that. Yeah, tell us a little bit about the journey in becoming an RN and a healthcare professional.
That's true. I didn't realize that while I was listening to that. We lived in Bethlehem, close to a hospital. So I would see all the nurses walking and together, and they all wore their uniforms with the real hats that they don't wear anymore. And it just seemed like a fun career. And, I guess I always took to healthcare, and I was always a people person. In our neighborhood, I was known as the cookie girl. So I would go around and talk to the old ladies who would bake cookies. It's amazing I'm not 400 pounds. And I probably just sat there and ate their cookies and talked to them. So it was like, it just seemed
my
natural.
Cookies now, damn it.
Now I'm the muffin lady. I make excellent banana chocolate chip muffins. I'll make you some sometime.
I'm hungry, yeah.
From scratch. That's my thing. But anyway, so I was always a people person. And nursing did just kind of lend to that. When I was in high school, I joined the Future Nurses, but then I also did theater and drama. And then I was a volunteer at age 13. And yeah, I just went to nursing school. But then I guess I never realized that acting and theater could be a real career, growing up in Pennsylvania. And then little by little, I got involved in, little, family things. My mom also sang. She knows how to speak Slovak, and so she was in the Tatra singing group, and I would do shows with her. And then I moved to New Jersey and New York, and I always did theater, and that's where I started taking professional classes. I worked at Radio City Music Hall. Nice. I worked for an oncology, and I've always done nursing and acting. And I just was telling a young girl the other day, I said, it's a great field. Honestly, you will always get a job. So when you hear no over here, you're going to hear yes here. And sometimes you hear, no, we don't need you for nursing, but we need you for the acting gig. Yeah. So one of my fun jobs now is I actually work on TV and movie sets as a medic and as a baby nurse. And I work pretty regularly on Days of Our Lives. And that's why I have my Days of Our Lives pillow over there.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. I was invited to their big whoop-de-doo party when they celebrated 50 years on the air. And what a baby nurse does is we are an advocate for the babies, because if they're under 6 months, you have to have a real nurse on the set. And we walk on with them, we carry them. If we see a cord out of place, we say that's dangerous. We have to make sure that they're only under the lights so long, because everything is very timed. And the parents can only be there with the babies 2 hours. They can only work 20 minutes. And it's broken up into 10-minute segments. Sometimes we walk on at 11, by 11:15, we're walking out the building. Sometimes we are there the full 2 hours. So it's very regimented. And then I also work on TV and movie sets as a medic. And I hang out with the police officers sometimes when I do that. Yeah. And we pray that nothing bad will happen. But if it does, we got—
You're all set to go.
We're all set to go. We got the medics and nurse. Yeah, that's what it is. So I've been always doing both. I mean, in New York City, I worked for an insurance company, and I had to go up to the high rise and say, I need your urine, I need your blood pressure, and then send it in. So there's
in that order?
There's many nurse jobs, and people don't realize that. It's not just the hospital and the doctor's office, which I've done, but many different types of nursing. So I want people to know that, it's still a good career. Now I do flu clinics. I'm big on giving flu clinic. I drove to downtown LA last year for the police, and I've given out many flu shots, and we're gearing up now for the fall. So Get your flu shot, definitely.
Yeah, especially with this COVID insanity all around. You don't want to wind up with the flu and COVID at the same time.
Right, you're right. It's another thing to keep you healthy. So that's definitely true. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I really enjoyed getting some insight into the baby nurse aspect on set, because I never really thought of that. And it's interesting because, as I mentioned, my wife's in healthcare. She's not a nurse, but she's in healthcare, and we'll be watching a movie or a show, and somebody will just give birth. And my wife will say, there's no friggin' way that that's a newborn. And I said, well, what do you want them to do? You want them to take them right from the delivery room onto the set? That's not going to happen. Look, there's still an umbilical cord.
They use a lot of twins. She probably knows this, but if we have twins and one is crying because they're real babies, then we swap them out. So we've already had twins, and they look at me and they go, they're both crying. And I go, that's what happens when you use real ones. Give us a 10-minute break and we'll be back. You know?
Yeah.
They use a lot of twins. Definitely.
So, when did you begin having your love for improv? Because there are a lot of people out there, that are comedians. They do stand up, and they have their set. I've been to a number of open mic places. I've never had the courage to go up there, although
you got to do it.
Yeah, you know what? I did. I will say at the New Media Summit, which ironically is the last conference I actually was able to go to in person. They had a little bit of a comedy night for some of us podcasters. And I did do, like, I'd say about a 5 to 6 minute bit that I used, or at least I used to use when we had these things called conferences and events, and I used to speak in front of people. I used a story and a bit that I had done before that deliberately was supposed to be funny, and I made it a little bit funnier and actually tossed some interesting, colorful language in it, and I got a lot of laughs. So I'm like, all right, I only have one bit, but at least that one bit worked.
For you. I got to travel last year to Alaska. I was the main speaker for their PTA conference.
Nice.
And, yeah, it was in April, and the weather was 50, 60 degrees, maybe 40, but it was fine. And they brought me out, and I was the speaker. I did expect like a couple hundred people, but they said, it's Alaska. We have to fly in. Yeah. So maybe it was 50, but it was wonderful. It was my first time in Alaska, and they treated me to everything. So I know what conferences are like. Let's bring them back.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe 2022. But I hear from so many comedians, that obviously, like yourself, have other jobs. Usually they're waiting tables, and that's a rough gig these days. But you actually, a lot of those folks, they aspired to be comedians, and that was their main career. And then whatever they're doing on the side is to kind of feed that. It seems like this is a little bit of the opposite, in that your main career seemed to be nursing from the start, and that was what your focus was. And then somewhere along the line, you didn't just get a love for comedy, you got a love for improv, which in my mind is a step above, because you've got to be on your toes. So when did that love for improv kind of seep in?
I like the way I'm going to tie it into when I was 5 and how I was always a people person.
Sure.
And when I worked at Radio City Music Hall, and when I worked in always the medical profession, people would hold things in. And as an actor, when we go on an audition, whether we're reading for a commercial and they give you lines and then they take your lines away and say, just make them up, you have to improv. I would love those auditions. There are actors that want the script. I want to improv. Don't make me memorize anything, please. I was on a soap opera once, and they're like, what's on your hand? I go, just a few of the lines. I want to improv. That's where I'm at. So I saw how people would hold things in. And I'm going to tie it in. I was a nurse at UCLA on the cardiac floor. And I was a fun nurse. I would sit on the bed and talk to people. And some of my fellow nurses are like, you got to move. You got to, move faster. And people would hold things in. And this would lead to heart problems and liver problems. Yeah. So I've done a lot of research. I'm going to tell you how your emotions do harm your body. Anger can weaken your liver. Grief can weaken your lungs. Worry weakens your stomach. Stress weakens your heart and your brain. Fear will weaken your kidneys. However, love will bring you peace and harmony, strengthen your body and your mind, and smile reduces stress, and smile spreads happiness. So why don't we want to do that more? It's people are so tense and geared up. And when I teach improv, and a big improv thing is using yes and. I wore my yes and button. So we could turn any negative into a positive. And I always joke that I have the two good kids, because the good kids have to go somewhere. They're both Eagle Scouts, and one of them is in vet school, and one of them speaks Mandarin. But suppose your kids don't want to eat, so they want to have the dessert. You go, yes, and Chris, after you finish your healthy thing, you can have your dessert. And Ken, you want to go out and play? I go, yes, and after you finish your homework. So yes, and is a muscle, and you have to use it every day. So when you're working with difficult people, whether it's in the medical profession, you go, yes, and, because that acknowledges that you heard them, and then you could bring them this way, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in banking. Right. Yes, and I know you want this higher rate. However, right now we're offering this rate. Maybe in a couple months we'll offer that other rate, but for now it's this. So yes, we'll acknowledge that you heard them. It's not a no but, because if you use no but, and then I point to my butt back here, it shuts the doors. But if you use yes and, it opens the doors. So when I was a nurse, I would see that people would hold these emotions in. And like, why don't you just say what's on your mind? And it sounds simple, like you miss somebody, say you miss them. I was speaking in LA to the Philharmonic Association, and it was all these older ladies who love to volunteer, God bless them. And one said, you know, I miss my friend Esther. We had a fight like 10 years ago, and we used to be friends for 20, 30 years. And she goes, I don't even remember what it was about. So I said, so today go home and call Esther and say, some crazy lady came and spoke to our group. Let's be friends from now on. And she goes, that's a good idea. Why didn't I ever think of that? Then she added, I hope Esther's alive. And I said, can't help you with that, but you better call her right away. So many people hold things in. And I think with COVID, I've been reached out by a lot of different people. I speak pretty regularly at Cal State Fullerton. They have a school of entrepreneurship, similar to like Shark Tank. And they have their projects already, what they're going to talk about. So I come in as a guest speaker and I throw them these questions all over the place. They're like, oh, I never thought about that. It's like, well, it's better to have me and flub up than when the guys with the money come in. Yeah. So they're gearing up now, and I guess they're going to have me out as a speaker, but I'm probably going to be on Zoom also. But I remember a couple of years ago, this girl stood up and she goes, can I say yes and to my mom? Because I'm studying and she's always interrupting me. And I said, yeah, you say yes and mom, I heard you. I will be down in an hour, because you acknowledge that. And she says, oh my gosh. So then we did some fun yes and games. And this is what's happening now with the Improv and the Zoom and Skype. I have people who wanted to try improv, but they're a little shy. They're like, I don't want to do it in a class, so I'll do it one-on-one with them on Skype or on Zoom. And I'm like, this is where we have to come into the moment. I have a saying, enjoy your moments. The good Lord put us here to enjoy life. And the more you do this every day, it's a muscle. I think it becomes easier. I say you do that. You enjoy every moment, I could tell.
Yeah. Well, I can go to a pretty dark place sometimes, admittedly, and I think I've even talked about that a little bit on this show from time to time. But yeah, that yes and, I never really thought about that. I think you're the first person to give me the yes and idea.
Good.
Now a word from our sponsor, the Police Officers Credit Union Association. The POCUA can suggest a credit union that serves public safety professionals in practically every state in the country. One area we definitely have covered is Washington, D.C. Police Federal Credit Union serves the Metropolitan Police Department in the District of Columbia and several law enforcement agencies in Maryland and Virginia. For more information about Police Federal Credit Union, go to policefcu.com or call 877-278-7328. To find an institution to serve you outside of Washington, D.C., Maryland, or Virginia in any of the other 48 states, go to policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't banking with a POCUA credit union, you're just working with an institution that just so happens to serve public safety professionals, and you deserve better. I keep thinking of one of our guests a few weeks ago, Melissa Agnes, who talked about branding and being crisis ready and so forth. And here we've got a ton of crisis crises here in 2020. And since, we also work with law enforcement, they're in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that she mentioned, which aligns really well with your yes and, I don't even want to call it an idea, I want to call it practice. Let's call it the yes and practice, is that, with all of these people upset on both sides, that you can't, what was the word she used? Oh, I remember the phrase. It was, you can't battle emotion with logic.
Right.
It just doesn't work. And so what your yes and does, in a very simple but useful way, if somebody says, we need change in policing, we need change in law enforcement. Yes, and
that's right, because you agree with them, how without saying no but, and that's true. Right. And I'm going to ask if I can tell you a little story about.
Please go ahead.
So I've done a lot of brain studies, and I've been reading a lot of books on brains and multitasking. Right now, I'm going to ask you: do you think it's good or bad?
You know what? It's not a yes or no question. It depends. And I'll give you an example. So you want to tell a story? I'm going to tell a story.
Okay.
So, and then we'll get back to your story. It's my damn show, so we'll both tell stories. My story first. I am not a brain expert, but I know, for instance, that listening and reading cannot be multitasked. I see people try to do it. I find it to be rude. And I know from studies that I've read that you either listen to somebody and give them your attention, or you're reading. You cannot do both successfully, given the way the brain works. However, many times what I'll do is I will listen to a podcast and I'll be walking or working out at the same time. Now, that is a multitask that's actually acceptable, because my walking, my lifting weights, my doing any of that is a different brain function, and I'm able to do that and still listen and get both of them done effectively. So, very long answer to what was probably, you thought, a simple question, is it depends.
Sure. Okay. So in our brain, we have telomeres, and telomeres are very similar to the aglets at the bottom of your shoelaces. Those little plastic.
Right.
So they're the protective end caps on our chromosomes, and they affect our daily habits. And people think as you age, your telomeres have to fray and shorten. Not necessarily. I want to live to be 100, almost there. And you guys, I never say my age. I just say I have a freaking high number. And my people that know me say, yeah, it is high. So the telomeres do not have to shorten as you get older. However, there are certain brain functions that you could do to, keep these. And one of them, I got to say, is not multitasking, because what multitasking does, it's almost considered like when the alarm goes off and you push snooze and snooze and snooze, your brain has to stop and restart. Ching, 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 ching. Mm-hmm. So I was at Target, and this woman about my age was doing a great job, but every couple minutes, somebody would tap her on the shoulder and tell her something else, somebody else. And these are associates. And I got up there and I said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm in your lane. I feel so sorry for you. And I said, how can you do that? And she said, well, we were told when we took the job, you must multitask. And so we're constantly stopping and starting jobs. And I said, how's that working for you at home? And she said, honestly, it's horrible. Like yesterday, I started to fold the wash. I didn't finish. I started to pay the bills. I didn't finish. Then I went out and did some gardening. I didn't finish any of them. And I said, I'm going to tell you 2 words that will change it. She looked at me and she went, that's it? I went, yeah, it's yes and. So you're folding the wash and your husband or your kid interrupts you. You go, yes and, I'll be right down in 5 minutes. And that's all it's going to take you. You don't stop now. Yes and, honey, I heard you. You want me outside? Wait till I finish paying these bills. But because you have to multitask at your job, when you leave Target, this is what you do. You turn to the building and you go, bye, multitask. And you leave it there. And don't take it into your car. Don't take it into your home. Because honestly, how long would it take to finish folding the wash or finish paying those bills? And constantly people are doing that. So I have an article on this, and I was at a business meeting, and this woman goes, oh no, multitasking's good, and I do it all the time. And she gets up to leave, and she leaves her purse and her cell phone. So I run it out to the car, And she goes, yeah, you could send me that article. I'll take it on email. Yeah. She's like, I don't need it, but it really does make a difference. But we have to, again, consciously say, I don't want to keep stopping and starting my brain. And like you said, walking and listening to music, that's one thing. But when people are constantly interrupting us, if we use yes and, I heard you, I will be right there. And how long will it take to finish this one job? I mean, versus we have everything half started. So when I do my improv, I give out these handy dandy reminders. I'm going to zoom it in here. One is called use yes and every day. The other is embrace the unexpected. Unexpected things are going to happen. Let's learn to roll with them and enjoy them. Learn to see the humor in all situations. Listen actively. Like Ken is telling me things and I'm hearing. Take risk, and mistakes and failures are even okay. So I had something unexpected pop up a couple months ago. I was driving up to LA to give flu shots to the police department, and I got a flat tire. And the AAA guy said, you can't drive up to LA on this donut. And I was like, okay. So he took me to the nearest tire spot. And I took a deep breath. I'm like, what would Improv Nancy Ann do? And I said, who's the owners here? And he told me Jim and Bill. And I walked in and said, Jim and Bill, I heard so much about your great place. And I have to be in LA giving flu shots. And they whistled. They got a car down. They got my car up. I was in and out with a new tire in 10 minutes. I kid you not. And I said, I thought I was going to drive to LA on a donut. He goes, no, but we have free donuts in the back room. So I said, sure, I'll take one. So that was all day. I'm telling the police officers, yeah, I didn't drive on a donut. Instead, I got to eat one.
Were they good donuts?
Oh, they were delicious. I don't eat donuts much. So when I do, it was wonderful.
So on the multitasking thing,
yes.
because I agree with you about 80-90%. Can I use your logic to tell my wife that I cannot fold clothes and watch the baseball game at the same time?
You really could do that. You could fold clothes. However, if you're like taking statistics, when my husband watches football, he's always writing things down. Yeah. If you're doing statistics, then you have to say yes, and it'll probably be after the baseball game.
Yeah.
So you just have to let people know. That's the thing. It's like, don't jump up and stop and start constantly. It's really bad for your brain. Right. Think of the telomeres and the aglets. And then you brought in healthcare. There's a story about the bombing in Brussels airport. Remember when we had that? And this guy, Sebastian Bellin, he was like 6'7", maybe 7'6". He went over for basketball. And I heard this story. You could look it up. Sebastian Bellin, he looked down and his leg was shattered. And he basically saw a woman over there. She was probably dead. And he said, hey, buddy, throw me that scarf. So he had enough common sense to know that her scarf tied on his leg could make a tourniquet. Right. And then he saw somebody else wandering around. He said, throw me that luggage cart. So they tossed it to him, whatever. Hey, you two guys, get me into the luggage cart. Okay, they lifted him. There he's in. Hey, push me outside. So he went from, there's my leg shattered, to I'm tying this, I'm in here, I'm in here. So they are now finding that people who have improvisation skills are very good in emergency situations, whether it's for police, whether it's for emergency medicine, because we could think and change on a dime. Yes, we're functioning this way, but all of a sudden, I don't know how this guy did it, but he was in that Brussels airport, and he went from, oh my gosh, to now I'm outside. So that's what they're finding. And that's what improvisation does. And a lot of my friends say, oh, you're so clever with what you come up with at the, somebody says something. And it was like, but it's a muscle. You got to use it. Kind of makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hadn't, I never thought about, how improv helps us through this insanity this year. And, I don't know how old you are. I don't need to know, but I'm about to turn 51, and I think 2020 is the craziest year of my entire life. Although my parents like to tell me about craziness in the 60s, I say, yeah, well, I don't remember too much from that, being born in 1969. But we need to be able to, find some resilience.
That's true.
And I see whether it's a nurse, a firefighter, a police officer. I've had the pleasure, and I do mean pleasure, to talk to people in all of those professions this year. I've had even firefighters. You would think that their jobs would be a little bit easier.
No.
This year among everybody, I talked to a New York fire department official, and he says about 3 months ago, when COVID was really high over there, he says it's like a shit show over here.
Yeah, you can say it. No.
And so, you really, I could see how these skills could really mentally, because really that's where the emotion is. You get to a point where you just want to cut everything off, or just get angry. This improv, could really create that resilience, it seems like.
And resilience is a good word. When I was speaking at one of the colleges, one of the students came up to me and said, "Would you talk to my cousin? He's really having a hard time and he could just use you." So we chatted on the phone about an hour. And if anybody's interested, I could do like a free Zoom or a Skype session, and you'll see what it's all about if you want to sign up for more. Sure. But my email is improvforhealth@gmail.com, very simple. And my website's improvforhealth.com. So it really, honestly, it's resilience, and it's a practice, and you have to work it into your daily life. And even though I talk about it and I teach it, like I said, when I got that flat tire, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But it all ended well. And I was doing improv with a senior group, and where I read that, learn to see the humor in all situations, she said, I fell down once and everybody saw I had Tuesday underwear on and it was a Wednesday. I said, do they still make those?
Wow.
Wow. In the old days, they would have all the days of the week. And I said, what did you do? She said, I just told them I actually did change it. I just forgot the day or something.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, that's goes along, since we're talking about healthcare, it goes along with what your mom tells you, is always wear clean and unripped underwear, because you never know if you're going to wind up in the ER.
You never know. That's right. And a lot of those seniors are funny. Like if I'm going to do it at a senior place, I'll say, purposely wear 2 different socks. And they'll come in and say, why did we have to do that? And I'll say, because that's called having fun with, an unexpected situation. Oh, I didn't realize that. And then we play like match up, like your sock will go with that guy's and that guy. It's like, do something unusual on purpose.
Right.
So just some days, just do that. Somebody will say, why are you wearing 2 different color socks? On purpose.
Well, I just don't want to throw anything away. I'm like, nobody's going to see my
That's
socks.
Right.
I'll have the attitude, if I wind up in the ER, I really don't care.
I don't either. It's thrifty. That's what else.
I'll just be happy. I'll just be happy if I make it out alive. So you've given us a ton of great tips here. And I really like your approach to the science of the brain. I truly do believe that. I think that we could study the brain for decades and decades and decades and still only scratch the surface of what this cool little computer in our head really can do. But you may have already given us some tips on this, but is there maybe a number 1 or top 2 tips for all of these public safety professionals that we're so pleased that watch or listen to the show, whether you're a nurse or a law enforcement, firefighter, EMT, corrections officer, as I say in the intro? Are there a couple things from your improv expertise that people should do in this crazy year?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, first of all, stress is the number 1 key culprit in aging. Yeah. So because I'm going for 100, we all have to keep our stress down. And how do we do that? There are actually 7 ways to keep us
awesome.
young.
I asked for 1 or 2, and I'm going to get 7. That's 7. Cool.
1 is exercise, and you know how important that is. And if you can't do it every day, every couple days. I try and go out every 3 to 4 days, and I walk about 5 miles. Some days it's 3 miles. Okay. Mm-hmm. 1 is sleep. And a lot of people in our profession and your profession, we don't get sleep. You need at least 6 hours of sleep. And this, you're not going to like. The main sleeping time is 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. If you're missing that, that's when your brain will re-trigger, and a lot of people don't even go to bed till 2. It doesn't mean every day, but 10 p.m. to 2 p.m., at least be in your bed and read a book or something. Another one is inflammation. People who have inflammation, they're showing that, they'll get disease and it's bad for your brain. Brain exercises. I'm not just talking sitting on your computer playing solitaire or something. Brain exercises with other people. Socialization. You and I are big on that. That's why I was the cookie girl. Okay. Yeah. Nutrition. We all know the good foods and the bad foods. Get more of the vegetables and fruits, and get your medical conditions under control. Because if you have them, it's going to lead to the stress and the inflammation. So I gave you 7 things, but the sleep is the one that people go, really? Try for 6 hours of sleep and try for 10 p.m. to 2 p.m. Now, because I'm a comic and a lot of the comedy shows start late, but those are the main hours. I mean, don't miss that window. If it's 1:30, jump in bed because it's almost going to be 2.
Well, so on that, I agree with all 7 of those. I probably actively practice at least 4 or 5 of those.
Okay.
I almost, I do agree with you on the sleep. While I don't, I usually am in bed well before midnight. I don't always make the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., but I'm really big on 7 to 8 hours.
Oh, good for you. That's
and
real good.
So, there are some nights where, it's 5 or 6. There are others where, maybe I can stretch it to 9. Which is usually the weekends. I usually make it really sure it's like, all right, we are sleeping in this morning. I'm not a morning person. That is not only my little perk, knowing that I could sleep till 9 o'clock, but also I feel really good after the weekend just because I've slept until 8, 9, sometimes 10.
Your body needs it. Your body needs it. I want to mention Time Magazine does these wonderful things once a year. Last year, they did the science of laughter, and it talked all about yoga, laughter, and everything. This year, guess what Time functioned on? Zoomed in on mental health. So I've been speaking to NAMI groups, you know what that is, National Alliance for Mental Illness. And I really believe, so this year Time did an understanding of mental illness, and it's all about, dealing with the COVID time. So they do it, I think, once a year. And my recent book that I read on brain is called This Is Your Brain on Joy. And
Awesome.
Dr. Henslin and Dr. Amen are from Orange County. It's a wonderful book.
Awesome resources. But the real question, going back to sleep, is if you're on 3rd shift in the ER, or that's your shift as a law enforcement. Firefighters, they're only working 2 or 1 out of every 3 days, and they get to sleep during the job. Little police officer joke. Sorry, but for those that have the midnight to 8 shift, what do you do with that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. window?
You're right. They're not going to get it all the time, but when they're off, the best sleep is 10 to 2. I have a nurse friend that have always worked night shift, and she recently did come down with cancer, and she said it's probably because my body is all goofed up. Yeah. I want to point out I'm wearing toilet paper earrings. A friend gave them to me.
Nice. I didn't even notice that.
It's toilet paper earrings. I had a birthday in April, and I put on Facebook, I want toilet paper earrings. And my husband goes, you're going to get a lot. And luckily I only got 1 pair.
Nice. Well, for those of you that are only listening to the audio version, pop off of that, get on the YouTube channel and look at Nancy Ann's toilet paper earrings. Last question I have for you, and you already kind of mentioned it, but it really bears mentioning again. For those folks out there that want you to come out and speak, that could really tap into your expertise on improv, especially given that you're a fellow public safety professional, how best can they find you, Nancy Ann?
Just email me, Improv for Health, and please don't put an E. It's IMPROVFORHEALTH@gmail.com. Just send me an email, and I love to travel. I'm not afraid to travel. You could bring me to Alaska. I think travel's coming back, or we could do it on Zoom or Skype or whatever. So thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I love what you're doing. Very interesting, very unique, and very helpful. So thank you so much for being on the show, Nancy Ann.
Thank you. Just remember, yes, and.
Yes, and. So we're going to do a yes, and that you watch this show or listen to this show, and you'll be watching or listening about a week from now when we have another great episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. But for now, stay safe and stay healthy out there. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by the POCUA. POCUA is a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. To learn more about our association and to find one of our credit unions or service providers near you, go to www.policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't working with one of our POCUA credit unions, you're just banking with an institution that just so happens to serve first responders. As a public safety professional, you and your family deserve better. Find a POCUA credit union today.